You think there will be other Otsutsuki members in the future?
I think it's all but guaranteed, really. So obviously, Momoshiki is big and scary at the current moment, but how are you going to ignore the ever looming threat of the entire like presence of space aliens that want to take over Earth? You know, and now that Earth has now seen the defeat of what two Otsutsukis, both Kaguya and Nishiki and Momoshiki to a degree, and Orishiki, I guess they're talking anime canon. I'd say there's a looming threat. I mean, we've already seen in the Boruto manga at least the presence of an Otsutsuki god, right? And that
Yeah.
would imply that if in that Otsutsuki god has like 70 Jogan, at least we believe them to be Jogan.
Yeah.
Um, and so like if there's an Otsutsuki out there who is able to swallow that many Earths, that thus would imply that there's probably many Otsutsukis under them. And we've already seen at the Otsutsuki hideout, we've seen the destroyed of the three, like, dual teams, and one obviously represents Kaguya Nishiki, the other represents Kinshiki and Momoshiki. What's the third?
Mhm.
So that to me implies we're gonna see more. People are saying, oh, it's Orishiki, but that manga panel is a manga panel, and Orishiki only exists in the anime for the current moment.
Yeah, I don't believe it's
So
Urashiki. I think that would be the dumbest thing.
exactly. It would be a cop out. It would kind of cheat the fans. So I think we're absolutely going to see more Ototsukis coming down the pipeline here. And look at Toneri's still on the moon. Like we've
Mhm.
we've we've seen Toneri. Like Toneri is still on the moon. Is he an Otsutsuki in the conventional sense? No, he's Hamura's offspring. But yeah, if Toneri's still there, then yeah, there's definitely more Otsutsukis coming down the pipeline here.
And the whole moon
I
was
had a quick
filled with
question
half.
for you. The whole thing with Sasuke getting the Rinnegan from Hagoromo, I'm not sure about that because when Madara is a reincarnate of Indra, and he incorporated Hashirama's cells, which is the reincarnate of Ashura, thus creating a Hagoromo's original energy,
Mhm.
manifesting the Rinnegan.
Yeah.
For Sasuke, him being the reincarnate of Indra, Kabuto put Hashirama's cells, the reincarnate of Ashura, thus manifesting the original chakra Hagoromo, which is why he was able to manifest to begin with, that being Hagoromo. And then he gets the Rinnegan from that process from Kabuto, and then maybe if we want to add on like the six Tomo on the Rinnegan, maybe that comes from Hagoromo's contribution.
Hmm.
I'm not certain on that. I'm curious.
Well,
My whole thing is Sasuke's Sharingan right now in Chapter 65 landscape still being amped by six past chakra, even though he doesn't have the Rinnegan.
so that's actually
Mhm.
an interesting. That's a cool theory you brought up that it was Kabuto healing him from Madara stabbing him through the heart with Hashirama cells that allowed him to awaken the Rinnegan. My only problem with that is though we saw Madara link up to Hashirama cells relatively early in his incredibly long life, and it wasn't until the very end of his life that he awoke to the Rinnegan. So it's not instantaneous. So certainly not a couple, at least from what we've seen, like what like the data that we have, it's not instantaneous. So I think it was more to do with Hagoromo. I don't think his Sharingan is still being amped by Sage Six Pass Chakra because I think it was just kind of upgrading his eye. That was what Hagoromo was going for. My whole thing with Sasuke just moving on is the fact that the eye that he lost, the six Tome Rinnegan, was his that was his Amaterasu eye, and his other eye was just Kagatsuchi. And Kishimoto conveniently forgot that each MS is supposed to have one technique, and if you lose said technique, you can't use that technique anymore. And now Sasuke can still use, Amaterasu and things like that. When technically losing that eye should have lost him the ability to almost use any MS ability because Kagatsuchi we know is just flame control. And now hypothetically, without flames to control, his other MS would have literally no ability. So that's my biggest thing with if we're talking Sasuke's MS in the newest chapter is the fact that he can still use the ability that he shouldn't have access to.
Nick, let me ask you this
Uh,
real quick question, right? Where do you scale Hagoromo Otsutsuki in the verse? When I ask people this, they always tend to scale Hagoromo to Kaguya, which I found strange because in most like versus battles or debates, you would upscale the character to like their apex. And to
yeah,
me, the apex of Hagoromo is post Kaguya. This is when he became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, like
of course.
the Sage of Six Paths tier. So anything that happened before Kaguya's defeat or sealing, to me, shouldn't be factored in. It's only post that happening that we should kind of scale that character, that version. Like Ten Tails Jinchuriki, creation of all things technique, which literally turns fantasy into reality. And there's
Mhm.
no confirmable downsides or double-edged swords or anything mentioned in the actual series from a panel, from an interview, from the dialogue in the anime or the manga, it's literally vague. And in that vagueness, I think we have to reasonably assume that he can do anything with this shit. And I think that's fair to say. Izanagi stems from it, but we know that there's costs there that wasn't elaborated on with the creation of all things. And of course, he can spam like chakra like a Dragon Ball character, similar to Momoshiki in Chapter 65. Of course, he has the Mangekyo Sharingan, Toad Sage Mode mastered, full power Susanoo, Rinnegan as well, 6 paths abilities. Yeah, he's fucking OP, bro.
Well, that's the thing.
Or what? Dang.
And you're absolutely right. And also when you consider the fact that prior to Hagoromo, essentially, the world didn't have chakra. We know that Kaguya was the first person to access chakra by eating the divine fruit, and therefore Hagoromo and Hamura were given chakra by being her children. And so this is actually a pretty common misconception. People think that like everybody, like they're like everything has chakra, and they're like, well, everything has chakra because Hagoromo went around the world after he sealed Kaguya and gave everything chakra, and then taught people how to tap into their spiritual energy. And that's Ninshu. Ninshu is tapping into spiritual energy, and by tapping into that spiritual energy, they would have something that was universally binding. But people combined the spiritual energy with physical energy, which gave you ninjutsu. So the fact that, and I really like that point. That's something that people don't talk about a lot, is that he lived a long life after the sealing of Kaguya, and a long life where he did achieve a lot. And so, yeah, I would say once again, I can't see him running the ones with Ishiki just because of how broken Ishiki's optical dojutsu is, being able to shrink all things chakra that are non-living. But at the end of the day, we're hard pressed not to say he's not running the ones with Momoshiki.
Do you think, what does Ishiki do against the creation of all things technique?
Well, I guess so creation of all things is, in a way, I think it's kind of an exchange. While there is no comparable there's no feasible downside that we know of. Creation of all things is the conversion of chakra, and he's converting in the circumstance that we see him use it. Only the one, unfortunately, is where he's taking the chakra of the Ten Tails at the end of his life and converting it into the Nine-Tailed Beast, which is like he identifies something imaginary and he projects his imagination into reality by creating it with chakra. It's a yin yang release. Outside of that, I don't know like how long that takes to launch. I don't know, like, yeah, let's hypothesize that he can create anything that he wants. But it's still going to take his chakra to create it. And that's the yin part. The yin part is imagining it with your like in this, Izanagi is a good example. You imagine your body elsewhere using yin release, and then you manifest your body there using yang release. So to assume with Izanagi, it's actually almost immediate, but there's a large cost there, and that's the closing of an eye, like eternally. So is that something he can launch immediately? Is it something that he can use in an offensive capability? We don't know that for sure, is the thing.